immediately. Speaking of people at risk, Torontonians are applying for housing, domestic abuse-related housing at a higher rate than ever before. People facing domestic abuse and violence and human trafficking are eligible by law for priority access to housing and what's called an in-demand form of housing. And by 638 of those households have been added in 2019, and 992 were added in 2020, a 55% jump over that year. That's the number of people that are looking to get out of an abusive situation and finding a place to live, not necessarily with kids, maybe individuals. Sometimes it's male, sometimes female, more often than not female. More than 225 applications have come in so far the first quarter of this year for housing. And this is the only real way that we're having an ability to kind of keep track. The police aren't really charging that many more people. They're not really getting that many phone calls these days because people are stuck inside homes with the folks that harm them. It's not like you can wait for the abuser to leave and go to work or down the street or whatever when you're in a lockdown. So it's hard to know from policing numbers what's happening, but we know from the housing response numbers and from my guest who's going to join me here in just a second that the numbers of court cases and things that are happening, people being charged and so on, is seriously spiking and through the roof. We're not being good to each other. We're not being nice. As a matter of fact, we had a caller wanted to join our show a little bit and just wasn't nice to our operator. Just wasn't nice to Loretta. It's not nice. It's not. We can't do that, right? So we have to be nice to each other. Speaking of being nice to each other, how is my friend Jonathan Lapide doing on this beautiful Saturday night?
Good evening, Yonah. Wonderful, and wonderful to hear you on 640.
Yeah, buddy, it's nice. We're back, right? We got the dream team together again. We had a little break, but we're back. Jonathan Lapide is a criminal defense lawyer. If you ever need one of those, you can be reached at 416-414-4439. Jonathan, let me ask you something. Like, you must be much busier. I know that you specialize in, just so you know, Jonathan specializes in DUIs and domestic assault and that kind of stuff. Busier now than you've been perhaps in the last 18 months?
Perhaps in the last 25 years.
Really? Like percentage-wise, would you say you're 10% busier, 25% busier? Give me an idea.
If the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, is listening, then I'm but generally speaking, it's super busy, and it's regrettable. It's unfortunate because we know what it's attributed to, and you spoke to it a little bit early. But if you think about it, right. Yonah, the factors are all there. I mean, you have essentially two life partners in a confined area during a medical emergency with stay-at-home orders, no or limited employment and therefore no or limited income, food and living expenses, kids at home 24/7, and no outlets other than alcohol or drugs for some. This is a tinderbox waiting to explode.
What matter? More men than women, more women than men? Are these more men being abusive, more women being abusive? Give me a hint based on what you see in the courts.
It's hard to say because traditionally it's been more men getting charged with domestic assault. And then in the last 10 years, I would say I've had quite a few female clients. But in all of the circumstances, it's not a surprise that people would be looking for social housing and shelters and independent living arrangements. Those numbers being up are quite consistent with what I'm seeing.
Substance abuse and alcohol still fueling this pandemic-related mental health issue like we talked about months ago?
Absolutely. Mental health is at an all-time rise. And I can tell you that the COVID has impacted everything. It's just impacted all things to all people. And I even have anecdotal evidence of road rage, and your previous guest, you mentioned, spoke about it too. We just have to be kinder in a pandemic because it's just so difficult for everybody. Everybody's experiencing pain and suffering here.
Have you had to play a role, actually in your career or recently even? Have you had to play a role in trying to find housing for someone who's in an abusive situation, or do you just deal with the legal stuff and try to let the social service people deal with it, which I know can be a real nightmare if you're trying to navigate that world?
Well, it's a really good question because indirectly what you're asking me is, can the criminal justice system do its job in ensuring that we eradicate domestic assault or intimate partner violence?
Right.
And the answer, in my view, is no. It is a great system for enunciating and deterring after it's happened.
Right.
But there's lots that can be done in terms of preventing it. And
So,
I can tell you that the courts are very adept at sending people to programs for rehabilitative purposes, such as PARS, which you're familiar with,
yep.
also known as Partner Assault Response Program. And this educates the offenders so they don't do it again. They don't become a recidivist or repeat offender. However, there are other things that can be done.
So we got a minute left. Tell me some advice that you can give to someone who might be listening and having a difficult time living in an abusive situation.
Yes, so reaching out is key. Reaching out, whether it's on a personal level to friend or family, or in my experience, the best thing to do is to reach out to a community effort. But one thing that they need to know about is Peel Regional Police just started a new initiative. They started it as a pilot project, and now it's turned into a dedicated unit where they have 50 specially trained plainclothes officers to engage and provide help to every person in the equation. That's prevention rather than reactive approach. I consider that a step in the right direction, and people should reach out to those trained officers.
You know what, Jonathan, I appreciate you joining me. Hopefully not hopefully, I'm going to count on you to come back and continue to be our criminal defense expert on the show. Jonathan Lapide, criminal defense lawyer, 416-414-4439. If you're in trouble, he'll talk to you. He's a guy you can trust and a good friend. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan. When we come back, we're going to talk about women's mental health issues and such. It's a real thing. You can reach us here when we come back at 416-870-6400 or email roadtorecovery@640toronto.com. I'm Yonah Budd, 640 Toronto. Be right back.